got 6 great guests, all of which interned this last year in marquee companies. And the purpose that we're addressing today is professionalism and work ethic. And so I'd like to begin, and we'll ask each member of the panel to introduce themselves, maybe your major, and then the company and what you did in your internship. And let's begin with that one, and then we'll come back with some harder questions. All right? That sounds good?
Yeah.
Caleb, let's begin with you.
Okay, I'm Caleb Wilkinson. I'm currently getting my master's in management information systems. I worked for Coke Industries last summer. My official title is a business systems analyst, but what that really means is I went between the people who wanted IT to do stuff and the developers, and I was that man who told them, translated from normal people into IT speak. That was my main job. So that's me.
I'm Jill Richardson, and I'm a junior. I'm studying marketing, and I interned for Zions Bank, and my official title, again, was in retail banking administration. But what I essentially did is data analytics, trying to develop new products for the bank, and then working with several product managers on online and mobile banking products.
Tanner Lobb. I'm doing a dual master's right now, the MBA and the MHR. I interned with PepsiCo in their Frito-Lay division in San Antonio. Fun fact, San Antonio is birthplace of the Frito, so just so you know. I was working in an HR capacity. 50% of my time was day-to-day HR generalist work, and then the other 50% was project-based with things like reducing overtime, revamping onboarding, and creating a great place to work team.
Awesome. I'm Greg Schenk. I'm just finishing up the Masters of Accounting here at Utah State. I had the opportunity to go and intern for Deloitte and Touche down in Salt Lake. I was an audit intern and was able to help on the financial statement audits of a couple different companies and see their inner workings. So, yeah.
Great. I'm Jessica Ricker. I'm a dual student like Tanner with the MHR and the MBA. I spent my summer with Lockheed Martin within their business unit of missiles and fire control. I was a talent organizational development intern, so I was more specialized in the sense of working with workforce development, leadership development, curriculum development around training, that kind of thing.
My name is Ryan Bentel. I'm in the senior year of my undergrad finance and econ. I interned at Goldman Sachs this summer in their operations management division, and what I was mainly responsible for was looking over the day-to-day operations and processes that they already had in place and looking for inefficiencies and ways that we could save time and money. Is where I spent most of my time.
Great. So we got a good panel here, don't we? All right. So let's just start with the notion of what effective work habits were essential for your internship success, including punctuality, productivity, or time workload management. All right. Do you want to start, Ryan?
Yeah, I'd love that. You want to give me the list one more time so I remember to hit everything?
That's fine. What effective work habits?
Work habits, okay. Work habits, I think being on time, or the way that it was set up in Goldman is you're on a specific team of about 8 to 10 individuals. And so just making sure you understand the culture of the team so that you can go along with that. If everyone gets in at 6 o'clock in the morning, that's what you need to do too. If everyone leaves at 6 o'clock at night, that's what you need to do as well. And so it was just learning the habits of the team that you're working on and making sure that you mirror those and are working in line with them.
Great.
I'll go next. I think something that was pertinent in my internship, I started out with a range of small to large projects and started out with 8, ended up having about 11 by the end of June. So something that was important was time management and prioritization of those projects and understanding the deadlines and what was expected, the out goal of each of those and the individuals I was working with.
Awesome. Yeah, so I for anybody who's in accounting or heard of accounting, I did my internship during the busy season, which it's as busy as it said it is. So the biggest thing for me was just getting there on time and being willing to stay late. There were a couple nights where we were there till 11:30 at night. And the biggest thing was that I was just there willing to help out the seniors or the managers on the job. Because as an intern, you don't know too much. You're definitely in that learning process. But as long as you're willing to work and you show that to the managers and seniors, then your work ethic is kind of spoken for, as long as you're there and willing to get your hands dirty and do what you have to do.
I really like all the comments. One that particularly resonates is kind of understanding the culture of the team you're working with or the environment you're working with. I feel like that absolutely facilitates your knowledge for how to work effectively within the team. Kind of just small, simple things that were particularly helpful for me that may seem overly simplistic is just keeping a to-do list with all the thousands of things that you get on your plate and that you add onto your plate, because that definitely happens. Another thing, just keeping the communication lines open, I feel is an effective work habit, because you always are clear on expectations. So I would touch base with my manager frequently. Another, and this might bleed into some other areas of the discussion, but I feel like it was a work habit that was effective, was getting out on the floor and out with as many different employees as possible, so that they knew that I was there, that I was interested in them, so that in turn, when I needed to call on them, they would know who I was and be more willing to help out with things that I needed.
Great. One thing that stuck out to me in my internship as far as work ethic goes was sometimes I would be handed a project, and I would ask my manager how I should maybe organize all these projects and which ones was priority, and he really appreciated that. Instead of just me trying to bust all these projects out very quickly, I could say, hey, what do you want me working on today? And then sometimes I would add to those. So one thing, and I've seen this in a couple internships I've done, is if you see something that can be done, you should definitely speak up and you should add on to your project. And sometimes that would mean I'd be there till like 7 on a Friday, just because I added to my own product or my own project that I was working on. But at like the end of my internship, when I was being evaluated and we kind of talked about my performance, they just loved that sometimes I would come to the table with extra new things that might have added more work to my team, but were very beneficial in the end. So looking for other ways that you can add to your internship was huge for me.
Yeah. In regards to work ethic, at Coke, they sort of incentivize you to get to know people. And that was really helpful for me. There was often days where I'd have lunch with the CIO of one company and some other people that were important, quotes around that, in the business, because I just said hi one day. And then they would be like, oh yeah, Caleb, he can do this stuff. And it gave me more opportunities to work with people. And on top of that, sometimes as interns, I had like 10 to 15 minutes where I was like, what do I do now? And I grew up where if you're not doing something, you don't get paid. And so I felt guilty when I wasn't doing something. One of my supervisors reminded me that they were paying me to be intelligent. And so I would bring books about what I was doing to work, and when I'd have those 10 to 15 minutes, I'd sharpen Caleb so that I was giving them a better person later in the day. Finding those ways to not sit around and just shoot the bull with other employees.
Great. One more question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So think about the transition from student to professional. What's the journey? What is different? What advice would you have in that space? And I'll let whoever would like to jump in on that one jump in.
I'll weigh in if you like. The one thing that is similar, and I'll start with that before I go to the differences, is the learning. The most important thing, in my opinion, of the college experience is learning how to learn. And that definitely applies in the workplace as well, learning how to learn new things. Because like I think everyone has said already, when you're starting to be a professional in a certain job field, most of the stuff that you're learning is going to be unknown. A lot of times the stuff you learned in school isn't 100% applicable because every company kind of does things differently. And so learning how to learn and be able to kind of minimize that learning curve so that you can be a stellar employee. And some of the differences, probably free time. A lot of times in school I'll have a class and I'll have an hour or two free, and then I'll go to class again, and then I'll have another hour or two free, and then my nights are pretty much always free. And that's just not the way it is in the professional world, obviously. You wake up and you go in whatever time you need to, and you leave, and then your free time is at night. And so making sure that you have that time management and understand that as you're going into the professional field, like for me in my internship, was very, very important. Just kind of mentally preparing myself for, okay, I'm waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, getting to work at 7, working 10 to 12 hour days. My night times will be free, but I'm going to be exhausted. So just kind of mentally preparing myself for that was the biggest difference between being a student and being a professional.
Other members of the panel, anything you'd add to that? Yes, go ahead.
I'd jump in with something that's not necessarily like learning based, but I am pretty used to wearing like sweats to class. And so in my internship, I was very surprised not that surprised, but it was just like a big transition from looking professional, maybe once or twice out of my school week to looking professional every single day. So interning in Salt Lake, I would like walk past City Creek and sometimes even go on my lunches and like hunt down deals for good pencil skirts because I wanted to match like Zions Bank, and everyone looked super professional and put together, and I think that speaks a lot to who you are when you look the part too. So that was kind of a transition. And the other thing was utilizing my lunch times, kind of like you mentioned. In college, sometimes my lunchtime is my transition between class and work, but that was just a game changer in my internship. Sometimes I would go negotiate contracts with my manager during lunch. Sometimes I would go meet people from other departments, or even the HR manager suggested a couple people that I have lunch with, just looking for future opportunities. And so it's just a great opportunity to network, and that's something that I never really took advantage of in college. I haven't thus far. Maybe I'll get some lunch with a couple of my professors, but that was something huge in my internship that I would suggest if you're looking to intern, is like make that transition from lunch being your free time where you look at Twitter for an hour to really networking with someone and making some great connections within your corporation or your business.
One thing I would add that's not necessarily something that should be different between school and the professional world, but something you should keep doing if you're not already doing it, is finding ways to keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. It kind of builds off of what's already been said, but something my manager said is just when you're in your comfort zone, you're not in your growth zone. And you definitely should always be looking for opportunities to get out of your comfort zone and see what new things you can learn. In school, it's probably easy, at least for me, it's easy to just, I have these classes, these are my friends, this is where I always sit, this is who I always sit by, and I don't know, for me it's easy to just kind of stay in my comfort zone, but definitely in the professional realm, I feel like it's very value added to keep pushing the envelope to get past that barrier and get out of your comfort zone.
Any other comments on that one?
I can touch on that. It's funny, Tanner, that you bring that up, because something that when I spoke with the director of my department, his big thing was learn to be uncomfortable, or learn to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, to push yourself. So I think that's important as well. I think also in the realm of school, we're working towards a grade, and we have all of these points that attribute to that grade, right? But when you get into the professional world, it's really understanding your customer and what they truly want to deliver that great product. It's not just, skimming the bare minimum if that's, the way that you do things. It's really understanding the inner workings of the customer that you're serving, whether in an HR function you might be serving an engineering role, or it could be external facing, your end goal, your end customer, but really understanding what they desire so that product is actually quality, not what your understanding of it is.
Great. Questions? Yes.
What was a hard adjustment for you from like your work as a student into becoming a professional? Like, what was the most difficult part?
I can touch on that. For me, it was that transition of, like Ryan had talked about, with school, we have such a flex of our schedule and going to class, but instead at Lockheed they do what's called a 980. So every day you have every other Friday off, but you do 9-hour days. And so it was a longer day schedule than I was used to. And on top of that, when I have a list of things to do, I really like to get those things done and do it at a quality level, but really get them done. And so one thing my manager had to let me know was, if you keep going at this rate, you might burn yourself out. And so just trying to find your own rhythm in a longer time period than you're used to, I think was difficult for me.
And for me, one of the hard things was, in school we get thrown into these groups and it's a blessing when they end after 3 months. But at work, you've got to learn to deal with people a little bit differently. I was over a project and I had this lady who was older. I won't say how old because there may be people in the room that may get offended, but she was older and I'd only conversed with her on the phone, and I thought she was ornery. And I was like, oh boy, because every time it was like at my throat. And I was like, oh boy. And then they flew me out to Georgia where she was located, and I got to sit at the desk on the other side of her, and I realized that she was jokingly angry all the time. Like, I was being threatened to throw staplers at me, but it was her way of teasing me to get in and be like, oh, I'm relatable. And so you just gotta key in on what people think and get used to people, because sometimes we don't understand where they're coming from. And if I hadn't flown to Georgia, I would have thought she was ornery forever, because that's how her voice came across the phone. But get used to people, see how they act, see why they're that way, because you're going to be working with them for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also add, just the hardest part for me, I think, was going from this student to an intern, and I was interacting and asking questions of these CFOs, CEOs, these bigwigs, and I was asking questions about things that I really didn't, that I was grasping to understand. And I think the biggest thing that I learned from that is just learn how to relate with people. If you can become a friend with that CFO or CEO, even though you might be intimidated, like you are as a freshman when you come into school and you have to go ask a professor a question, if you can learn to relate with them, then when you go and ask them these questions, if you don't exactly know what you're asking, if you're kind of lost on where you're going, they're willing to help you, because they've been through these audits that you're doing, and they know exactly what you're looking for, and they're going to help you just like your manager would if you're able to relate with them.
I think a tough part, and maybe it was just me, hopefully not, but in that part of that transition is you're going from school, you're going to this company, and kind of everything's on the line. So you feel a lot of pressure to kind of be what the organization, you just create this image of what they want you to be, and you kind of feel this pressure to be that person. And just in thinking about this panel before we were coming today, I think that you're not, in terms of professionalism, you're not being professional if you don't allow space for your personality to be with you in the organization. Granted, you want to be yourself, but you want to be your best self. But I think part of being professional is letting your personality come with you and then channeling it, of course, in the appropriate directions. But that was a hard thing for me as I was interviewing, as well as going out. Okay, I haven't been here. They're probably expecting X. Do I need to be exactly X, or how do I work that?
For me, the biggest transition was going from a world where I understood and knew what to expect. After the first day of class, when you get your syllabus and you know exactly how the class is going to go, you have the schedule, and your tests are going to be, and everything is kind of laid out for you for the next 3.5 months. But then you get into this world where, yes, you have certain responsibilities that yes, I have to do this every single day, or I need to accomplish this by the end of the week, but then every single day was dynamic. Everything was always different. You go into work and you're not really sure what to expect, and especially if you work in some sort of financial-based industry where the markets are changing and things like that. We worked right through Brexit and all of that stuff, and so things are shifting constantly, and so every single day was different, dynamic, and shifting. And so that was, for me, it wasn't a bad thing, but it was just something that I had to get used to, because I knew it was gonna. I know it's gonna happen up until May of this year because I know all my classes. But every single day was just different, shifting dynamic.
Another question? Yes.
Can I ask, it's kind of a follow-up on what you were talking about, Greg, about asking questions of those, who are higher in experience and knowledge and authority. And I'm just wondering what your experience was, if you were, if any of you were like assigned a mentor, or if that's something you kind of had to go out and actively seek someone to kind of show you the ropes and help you as you were starting out your internships.
Yeah. So I know just for Deloitte, at least they assign you a mentor. But it's somebody who's not, so you work on teams, engagement teams, and my mentor happened to be on the other side of the state most of the time. And so it was a setup person, but who became my mentor was the people I was working with, were my seniors, my managers. And it honestly was through, you have to make an effort because they're there to help you, but if you don't reach out to them, then they're just going to kind of assume that you're doing your thing and that you're good. But it was through an effort, and I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I'd like to go to lunch with you next week and just kind of get some feedback on how I'm doing. And it was this constant process that you had to seek out. And by doing that, I was able to get some really good feedback, and it really helps you grow. And it also gives you somebody that you can reach out to when you get moved to another job and you're like, man, I've already asked a lot of questions in my senior year. Don't want to bug them too much. You can reach out to your other mentors in other jobs and ask them questions.
Yeah, on that note, at Coke they give you a mentor too, and she actually sat right behind me, and it was great. But you don't want to bug them too much. And then Greg mentioned that asking the CEO or CFO questions, and that depends on company culture. I mean, at Coke they're way open to you just walking in and taking some time, but you need to be careful doing that because he makes a lot more money than you do, he or she, and that time's worth a lot. And so if you have a question, go ask them, but realize, okay, 10 minutes is probably enough because I'm taking a lot of precious time here. And I had some great experiences with different presidents of different companies at Coke because I said hi and I was like, hey, I'd like to speak to you about this thing that you mentioned when you were presenting to the interns. And then I come by my office, I'll give you 10 minutes. And I was very respectful of that 10 minutes because really they were sacrificing time to be mentors. So.
Yeah, I was also assigned an mentor, but I mean, a mentor is someone that you can relate to, that you feel comfortable asking to, that you have can build a relationship. So whether or not you're assigned a mentor doesn't necessarily mean that person's going to be your mentor. And so it's good to have an assigned person at the beginning so you can know who to go to for questions. But I would encourage you to, and maybe the assigned mentor is someone who you can relate to really well, and you end up building that relationship. But I would encourage everyone to find people that they really relate to and can become really close to on a personal level, so they can feel comfortable asking questions and not feel embarrassed and things like that. And so I would encourage you to just find other people as well that can be your mentors, kind of like other people were saying, because an assigned mentor may not always be the best person that can help you the most.
One of the wonderful things of being an intern is that you have a unique status in the organization. And people notice you, they know that you're there, and you actually, they're just about anybody you talk to is going to be willing to coach you, to give you insight, to give you feedback, and so it's, you really should use that internship status as an opportunity. I think, Joe, you mentioned it, of meeting these people and going to lunch and building these relationships, because when you're in a regular role, while you can still practice those habits, people just seem to be incredibly open to spend time with interns, and they really like doing that.
Just to add on to that, specifically thinking back to the effective work habits, I would say that is definitely one, is just invite yourself to as many things as possible, because there's a good chance you'll be able to, because of your intern status, get into meetings or situations that you'll probably, depending on your role, may not be invited to when you come on full time. So definitely invite yourself to as many things as you can.
So some of you were doing kind of the regular work that you would do as a full-time employee. Some of you had a mix of regular work and projects. Some of you maybe were just projects. Let's talk a little bit about projects. What did you learn in what were some of the types of projects that you did on your internship, and any words for the wise or those who wish to become wise in terms of working on projects and working with the sponsors of those projects.
I can start. So within my role, it was more specialized rather than in the HR generalist realm. It was more in the sense of what I was doing was a normal day-to-day thing. But some of the projects we worked on, it was interesting because half of our location is also in Orlando. And so we were working on a team, for example, that there was a little bit of lack of communication. So we had to learn about problem solving and how to be transparent, conflict resolution, things like that. So that was really interesting. But a project that I was specifically assigned allowed me to work with the VP of HR of all missile and fire control, as well as the director of the program I was in. And so that was a really good benefit and opportunity to gain leadership experience.
Yeah, in mine, they pair you up with other interns to do a project, and so you work with your specific team of full-time employees to do things every day and work on projects, and then they give you a specific intern project, or several in our case. And so for me, it was a little bit different. I've always kind of had an old soul anyway, and then I was also 2 years older than most of these people because of the whole LDS mission thing. So a lot of these kids were younger than me, and you could tell that they were in like their sophomore, junior years, and they'd never ever really worked with anyone on anything before. And they were all super intelligent people, but for me it was a little bit difficult trying to get used to these kids that are the same ages as my little brother, and trying to work on projects together. So it was a really good learning experience for me on how to work together as a team, and it was kind of like a coaching experience, but also I learned a lot from it. Just making sure that you are keeping deadlines and just trying to set the example as far as that. And then if other people don't meet their deadlines, instead of saying, why didn't you meet it? It was, okay, what can I do to help you? Where can I jump in and help you with this? Can I help you with that? And just encouraging them and working as a team, because that's really what it was. It was all about learning team building and building those relationships. And so I think that was the most effective thing for me. And then also time management, because I had all these projects with my full-time team and all these daily tasks, and then I had these intern projects, and then every now and again they'd spring these special projects on us to give us 2 days, like, hey, we're doing this pitch competition, it's Wednesday, prepare a pitch with these 4 people that you've never met before for Friday on how we can improve something in the company and tell us how much money we can save. And so like there's all these things that were constantly changing, and so time management I think was huge, because when you're stressed and you feel like you should be doing other things, it's really, really hard to keep those relationships and not get frustrated with people on your team. But I think that's super important, is just keep a cool head and feel like you have control of your situation by keeping a list of things that you need to do, or plan out your time accordingly so that you feel like you're being efficient and not wasting time.
One of the things that caused me an amount of stress when I first got there is they gave me a project and they said, this is yours, you get to decide whether we go forward with it or not. And it was like a $50,000 or $60,000 project, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm an intern, right? And it's true, when the time came, I got to decide, with other people in the room, whether we kept going or we killed it. And then they had us do an intern innovation project, and it came out to be like $15 million, and I was like, I can't even count that high, right? And so there's a different level of stress when you're playing with somebody else's money. And these projects were real. They implemented a lot of the intern projects that we were doing, and they were substantial chunks of money, and I was just like, wow, you're trusting interns. But it was sort of nice, because it's like, okay, we're thought of as contributors. It wasn't just a, go get me coffee type thing that everyone hears about. It was, I'm making decisions that are affecting the company.
Yeah, speaking of some of those projects, or just what kind of projects we handled, I was given this big table my first day, just this big Excel sheet with all the projects my department was working on and what my role was within those, and then the dates on those and how far we were ahead or how far we were behind, and hey, would you mind calling this person and asking about this? heckle project, and I'd be like, okay, what's a heckle? And I had this little, I called it like my financial Bible, and I would write like, okay, home equity credit line or whatever, and I would write all these acronyms that I had to learn in the financial world, and those helped me like throughout all my projects. So you're given, in my case anyway, I was given all of these projects that my team was working on, and the other teams and other departments in other states even were working on, and we worked on those together, and then I was given some projects just for me, and then I would go out and I would ask for help from compliance or ask for help from an intern in credit risk analysis or something, and then I would work with them. But a couple cool things that I got to work on, not to like do bragging, but I think it's cool to kind of hear specifically some of the projects that we were working on. They wanted to capture more millennials in banking, and so my second day I walked in, and my manager's boss, who's pretty high up in the company, he's a VP, like, hey Jill, come in my office for a minute. And I was like, oh no, like what am I wearing? Like what did I do already? And so he grabbed me and he pulled me in and he's like, you need to write a report about all the apps that your generation are using, like financial tech apps, fintech, and write a report. I want it by the end of the day, and I want to know like how many of your friends are using them and why they use them, and how many friends are trading, and how many of your friends use Venmo. Or I taught him about Venmo first off, and he was like, what's that? I was like, let me tell you. So just there's so many projects we're given, and I think there were so many things that I was able to add in those projects, and not like as a bragging point, but really you bring a unique perspective to your company as an intern. And so I said, let's pull a focus group together, because I can read about articles of millennials in banking or financial industry online all day, but let's pull our own focus group. So they're like, all right, you order some meters for everyone, and you find a focus group of this demographic, and we'll pay them this, and blah, blah, blah. So there are just so many projects that you're able to help out with and bring a unique perspective to, and it's not really something that you need to be afraid of. I know we're talking a lot about the transition, but it's like, because you just came from college, you have this perspective, and that's why they hired you. They want, your unique personality, and they want your unique input to all these things that they're working with. So don't be afraid of your projects, whether they're team or seem more individual.
I would say with those projects, honestly, like if you work hard and just give it your best shot, I mean, the Huntsman School of Business does a great job at preparing us. There's a lot of group projects, and while we may wait for them to end at the end of 3 months, those projects are great preparation for the real world. And in my experience, if you use that work ethic that you learned while going to school, and you get out there and you just put your head down and go to work, and you work with those around you, you're going to do well, and you're going to succeed in those projects. Even though you may feel like they're completely overwhelming, you'll look back at the end of the project and realize that you did a good job. And using that work ethic, I mean, your role as an associate, as an intern, or whatever you are at the lower level, is to make the person above you's job easier. So as you work hard on these projects and you do well, they're going to see that, and they're going to give you more of their projects. So you're going to stay on that learning curve, and you're going to better yourself as an individual and as an employee, as well as help those above you. And you'll kind of build this reputation that comes from your professionalism and your work ethic, and that you'll get that recognition, you'll get promoted, and you'll get these bigger projects you'll always be on the learning curve. Something one of my professors taught me is just always be on the bottom side of the learning curve, always be on that steep side going uphill. You don't ever want to get to a plateau. And if you're working hard on these projects, then you'll always be getting new projects. They're going to keep you climbing up that hill and learning. So,
yeah, I think the biggest thing that I honestly wasn't that good at, and this was part of my feedback at the end of my internship, was having checkpoints throughout to make sure you're hitting your checkpoints with your projects. Just because as an intern, you're trying to make a really good impression, and so you're probably extra willing to take on any assignment that anyone gives you because you're trying to make that good impression. And then also, you kind of have your own curiosities where you want to just learn more about the business and things of that nature. So at the end of the day, you've got to remember, I feel like I got pumped full of golden nugget one-liners, but another one I saw on my internship was, what interests my boss fascinates me. So, but kind of to your point of making your boss's job easier and making them look good, at the end of the day, you do need to remember what's most important to the person you're reporting to. And even one silly example, so the plant director where I was at, we had the supply chain VP, and they were trying to clean everything up, make everything look spick and span, ready for this VP to come and check off on San Antonio. And she wanted like the fire lanes repainted on outside, and she was kind of hesitant. I was like, we can do that. And she kind of hesitated. I was like, we can do that. And like at the end of the day, finally we convinced her to like let us paint the fire lanes. But just whatever interests, what interests your boss fascinates me, even if it's painting fire lanes but definitely make that the priority.
Along those same lines, especially as an intern, you never want your boss to be wondering what you're doing or where you're at in a project. You always want to be able to provide those reports, whether they're weekly or bi-weekly, so that they know exactly where your time is being spent and how you're moving along with those projects. And so something that my boss said to me that they really liked was that I'd give weekly reports on Friday, I'd send it out, and I'd have my mentor look over the report first and say, hey, this is what I did, like, how is it worded, like, do you like everything? They would proofread it, and then I would send it to my manager so that they knew exactly where I was at with all of my projects at the end of the week, where I was spending my other time that looked like free time. And so if they saw me looking up articles online or stuff, they knew that I was looking it up for this project and not just looking it up because I was just reading like articles on Facebook and stuff like that. And so I think it's really good to make sure that your boss is never guessing or wondering what you're doing or where you're spending your time.
We have a classic case that happened to an intern in our master's program. She was working on a big, huge project, and it was a little bit ambiguous. So it's a little. She first had to kind of grasp all the pieces and so on. And about a month into her internship, she meets with the sponsor of this particular project, who actually was the head of the whole internship program. And she kind of gives an informal kind of, oh, I've been doing this and I've been doing that. And the boss looks at her and says, is that all you've done? So she said she went home, cried all weekend. And but came back Monday morning, scheduled another meeting. She came in dressed very professional. Over the weekend, she had worked out the whole project plan, where she was, what she had done, so on. She scheduled weekly follow-up meetings with that boss, and in the end, that company was in the oil industry. Just as it was doing this, and so of 8 interns, she was one of 2 that got a full-time offer out of the deal. But increasingly, I mean, there's a tendency to think, all right, well, they're counting on me, and I've got to do this, and so you just knuckle down, and you're just working so hard. But I think those touch points, I mean, every one of those weekly reports is a chance for that manager to come back and say, oh, I think you're kind of getting off track here, or hey, have you thought about this, or here's what I'm doing. And anyway, she's really impressed with those regular follow-up kinds of things.
I saw intern projects that spent the entire 10 weeks working on it and then got to the end and it wasn't actually what the managers wanted because they never checked in. So they just wasted all of their time and the managers didn't actually get what they wanted out of it. So.
Really important principle to know. And it's not always easy to check in with your boss. No. You have to take the initiative. You have to learn how to work with a busy person. And so you have to take the initiative. And they may say, yeah, I'm going to meet with you. And you keep saying, all right, when they going to schedule it? You check with their admin. You get on their calendar. You make it happen. Good comments. Other questions? Yes?
So for those of us who are preparing for internships or hoping to be preparing for internships, could you imagine going back in time and telling yourself before your internship how to prepare for it? What would you tell us to do right now to prepare for a prospective internship?
For the actual internship or the interview process, or
the actual internship?
Actual internship. I would going back. I would say, I've done well in school, but I would say when you're going through these classes, try and think, and it's hard without having done it before, but try and see how this is going to apply to a real world job. How your marketing or how your accounting and just how these concepts are going to be in the real world, because it's easy to go and do these problems and take a test and do well on a test. And then you get out in the real world and you're like, man, I crammed for that test and I knew it for like 2 days, and then 3 days later I don't remember what was going on. So try and you won't be able to remember everything, but grab the big overarching concepts, and then when you get out in your internship, you're going to see those come up in different parts of the business depending on what you're doing for your internship. You'll see those come up, and if you're able to recall key points on that, you'll be better prepared and ahead of the game, so you won't have to go back and study like I found myself doing occasionally, going back and studying these concepts that I already knew, but I had taken the approach of, well, I need to know this for the test, not that I need to know this for my career and my own tool set.
If you're not already, get comfortable talking to people and just talking to random people. So if you wanted to set a goal to just talk to a new person every day, so in class sitting down next to someone, just get to know them, or on the bus or walking around campus, just reach out and just say, hey, how are you doing? My name's so-and-so, what class are you going to? What's your major? Just trying to get to know people, because I think that is something that really helped me in my internship, is because there was another intern on my team and he was a lot more quiet, very, very reserved, and you could tell that it affected his relationship with the team. And it's not that he performed poorly or anything like that. He excelled in what he did, but the reviews that he got weren't the same as myself or other interns who were a little bit more outgoing and got to know the people we were working with. And so as it's not always about performance, unfortunately. Like, performance is very important, but you're going to be working and interning with people who are all at the same level as you and all very, very intelligent people. And the difference maker can be those relationships that you build. And so just, if you're not already, get comfortable talking to new people and getting to know them, and trying to build those relationships.
The thing that I would say is, in my mind, I call it being a tinkerer. I was one of those kids who hated in math class when they'd say it's useful out in the real world, but they'd never tell me why. And it just drives me bonkers, because, here's this great equation, you'll use it all the time, and where? And they'd be like, oh, it's in the real world. And like, so where? and it would aggravate me. And I'm a master's student in MIS. I'm currently taking 2 computational finance classes because I wanted to see how finance worked. What are these options I hear about, or futures contracts? What are these things doing? How do they affect business? Why am I doing these things? Why are they important? I mean, every class that's taught at the Huntsman school, no matter what you think of the class or the subject, they're teaching you things that are actually used in the real world. Someone invented that because it was useful. And so if you can find those things and be intrigued about the cool parts of it, because I don't like math, it's boring, but I love statistics. I mean, if you can tell me 95% of the time something's going to happen, I'll love you forever. I mean, that's cool. So find things that are intriguing about the things you're learning, and go play. That's really what learning is to me, is play. Find the things that are fun, because there's stuff that's boring, but go after things you enjoy and get prepared, because that's what they want. They want you to learn and grow and pay you more for your value you create.
So I want to insert something here. I listened to a group of HR students report what their summer internships looked like a couple of falls ago. And 2 of the Honeywell interns said that when they were taking a capital management course, or learning the subject matter for capital management, at the time they thought it was totally irrelevant, and they were wondering why it was part of the curriculum that they were studying. When they got to Honeywell, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like they were given a $3 million project. And had they not been given that foundational background in capital management, they would not have succeeded in the project that they were given. So as you take courses, don't think anything is irrelevant, because you never know when you're going to get to plug in a bit of knowledge that you've gained from one academic course or another. Right?
One of the things that I would just suggest as a professor, you get into the mode of turning in assignments or turning in projects, and what you figure out is what's needed for this or that professor to kind of get the grade that you're hoping to get. But what if you were to think of every assignment you turn in and say, all right, I'm turning this into my boss's boss. All right, so I'm turning this into a director, I'm turning it into a vice president, I'm turning it in. And what can you do to put the polish on that so that your brand stands out? And there's a lot of difference between something that's just slapped into Word and turned in, as opposed to somebody that really takes the time and makes that document look nice and makes it look professional and look like you cared about what the person, I think we want to think, well, I got all the answers right, but what was my brand? What did I put in there? And speaking of brand, and Greg, I think you talked a little bit about that. What is your professional image or brand? If you think about what is the image that you would like to portray to the organization, the organizations that consider you, organizations that you work for, what could people be doing today to build that brand?
Yeah, Greg.
Let's start with Jill. You're the marketer.
I'm a marketer. I was like, hey, branding. I love branding. Let's see. So when I went in for my first interview at Zions, you really just have to build that brand like from the get-go. If we're talking about interviewing, and I'm a huge advocate for LinkedIn too. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile is consistent with who you are and your personal brand, if you will. But when I walked in and I talked to the admin assistant and asked where my potential manager's office was, I wanted to be like humorous to her, but also very kind to her, and so that's kind of what I like to stick to. I like to think of that as my own personal brand, that I'm fun to work with, but I'm also very professional, and I get the job done. I don't know, that's something that's definitely easy to develop in college. You just have to put time into it, I think, and your professors get to know you for being that person that turns in their assignments 2 minutes before the deadline or 2 days before the deadline, and they get to know if you make enjoyable comments in class or you're just in the back on your phone. So same thing entering the corporate world or whatever position that you're potentially going to get in. Make sure you establish that brand up front and really decide I remember the night before I started at Zions, I was thinking okay, what am I going to wear? What am I going to eat at lunch today? What am I going to bring to the table our very first meeting? And so I just brought up we had this big Zoom, it's called the Zoom meeting, right, where you have all these screens and people kind of Skype into a meeting. And when they introduced me, I told some joke about banking, and they're like, oh man, best intern already. And I was like, wow, thank you, that means so much. And I know that being funny or being very personable and getting to know people, kind of as Ryan touched on, that doesn't make or break your pay necessarily, but if you're an enjoyable person to work with and that's your brand, then going forward, you can get a job again, or they want to hire you back when you graduate. So easy, because you're professional, you're easy to work with, and people like to work with you. You're not that person in the group project that's slacking.
Just because we're out of time, I'm gonna make sure I can get my 2 cents in. You want to just build off of who you are. Everyone's unique, and you want to bring diversity in terms of thought and experience, and all of us have that because we all have different backgrounds. So in terms of your brand, just build off of that. I grew up on a hay farm, so hard work gets thrown out there a lot, but I can legitimize that with building on my experience on the farm, not afraid to roll up the sleeves and really actually physically get your hands dirty. And then in other terms, I'm a pretty competitive guy, I'm a sports guy, I've been on lots of teams. I know that teamwork is important, but really the individual competitiveness is a key aspect in feeling good about your own performance, but then lifting the performance of your team. And I like to have fun. Frito-Lay, they have the Frito-Lay fundamentals, so I felt right at home there. But just build off of your own experience and who you are, and then tailoring the messaging of it will come with practice. But another thing I wanted to add to your question about how to prepare that I felt was important, at least for me, is in a sense remember that you are going to be an intern and you can't ever fully prepare, and you are going to make mistakes, and that is totally okay. That's the other benefit of being an intern. There's the benefit of being able to get into areas and learning opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't, and then there's also like you get a little bit more mercy than maybe a full-time person would, but
A lot more mercy.
it's important to show that when you do make mistakes, recognize it, and then definitely follow up on it, but just realize it's okay to make a mistake, and just understanding that I think is value added going into it.
Any last burning comments?
I think one other thing, just touching on the preparation, it's never too early to start networking with the company that you'll be starting with. I think that shows initiative, and it shows that you really care about the individuals you're learning about. And for me personally, I wish I would have networked a little bit more, because when I got into Lockheed Martin and the business unit, there's so many things that they do, and so many things went over my head. And if I would have just done research through networking with individuals and learning what their roles are and the products they work with, that I think that would have been a help in preparation.
Very good. Let's give our network our network.